The social contract is like the terms and conditions we agree to when we sign up for a new smartphone. Except this one's for society, and well, you don't actually really sign it. It's just there, and we agree to follow it just by virtue of living in the society. First, let's review the three philosophers who predominantly contribute to social contract theory as we know it, each in their own special way. Thomas Hobbes believed that life without this kind of social contract would be solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. To make sure we would survive, Hobbes advocated for a supreme ruler, who he called the Leviathan, who would enforce strict laws limiting our freedom, but ensuring that we would be able to live in safety and security. John Locke, on the other hand, was a little bit more optimistic, suggesting that we could all live in peace if we just respected other people's rights. And his key individual rights were the right to life, liberty, and property. Just like it says on my shirt. If you want one of your own, you can check out my merch store below. Jean-Jacques Rousseau, however, believed that what's best is for everybody in society to do what's best for what he called the general will of the community, where everyone genuinely wants what's best for all, which is kind of like hoping everybody at a party will agree on the playlist. If your party is small enough, that might work, but the more it grows and the more people's tastes get different, that might be way more difficult to do. So how can the general will work as societies get larger and more diverse? Fast forward to today, where the social contract isn't just something that's written in history books, but is part of our everyday lives. Let's start with a look at paying taxes. Taxes are like your contribution to the social contract. All modern societies have some form of taxation, where the population contributes to things that they feel that the government should be responsible to provide for everybody. Depending on where you are, these things can be different, ranging from education to the military to healthcare. Taxes are part of the fabric of our society that we've accepted as necessary. Voting is another way we see the modern social contract, where we collectively decide who gets to play the role of Hobbes' Leviathan. But drawing on Locke's philosophy, we do have the right to choose new leaders if we don't like what we see in the current government. At the end of the day, the social contract also says that it's the responsibility of government to follow the will of the people. And we have the power to change the government if we feel like they're not holding up their end of the deal. The protection of rights and freedoms is another key element of Locke's philosophy that we see in the modern day. Many states have these codified into their constitutions. In the United States, the Constitution and its amendments protect things like the freedom of speech and freedom of association. In Canada, we have the Charter of Rights and Freedoms that protects a very similar list of freedoms. On the global scale, the United Nations has developed the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which are a series of rights that we believe should be applied to everybody all around the world, regardless of their ethnicity, background, or where they happen to be born. All of these ideas are rooted in John Locke's philosophy. Now let's talk about security laws. This is where Thomas Hobbes' view comes to the forefront. When governments pass laws that limit our freedom in the name of security, that's a page right out of Hobbes' book. For example, consider when governments might impose states of emergency or curfews or even martial law. In these cases, the government gives itself extraordinary powers to deal with a quickly escalating situation. During hurricanes, for example, we've seen governments impose curfews to limit the movement of people out in the streets so that emergency response can deliver help to the people that need it. Another example is the increase of surveillance in society. Take London in the United Kingdom, for example, where there's about one CCTV camera for every 10 people who live in London. You're kind of being watched everywhere. Finally, during the COVID-19 pandemic, we saw laws like mask mandates. These compelled people to wear masks in public to minimize the spread of the virus. All of these examples of limiting people's individual freedom in the name of security are examples of Hobbes' view on the social contract in action. Rousseau was actually the originator of this idea of the social contract, so we owe a lot of these ideas to him, especially this idea that governments should reflect the will of the people, which he termed the general will. More specifically, though, his ideas are perhaps the trickiest to pin down in modern society. Because, again, thinking about how laws should reflect the general will of the community, where do we draw that line between knowing whether it's actually the community's general will or whether it's a will that's being imposed by the government on the people. However, we can perhaps make a link between Rousseau's philosophy and elements of direct democracy that we see in society. Take, for example, a country like Switzerland that holds a number of different referendums each year where citizens actually get to vote on specific issues. The United States is a similar process through its ballot measures that people get to vote on every time there's an election. However, in most of these cases, its majority wins. So how can we be sure that it's really the general will? So it's not all sunshine and rainbows in social contract land. There are some real critiques. First, there's this idea of implicit consent. Did we really consent to this contract, or are we forced into this social contract because we're born into it? And is that fair? And what about inequality? How can we be sure that our social contract applies to everybody the same way? Or even should it apply to everybody the same way? For example, is it possible to create a system of taxation that works for everyone? Finally, there's increasing globalization. National contracts are one thing, but what about our global village? Who's managing that? And as our societies get more diverse, these challenges continue to grow. So there you have it. The social contract isn't just some relic from the past. It's alive and kicking. Remember, every law, every agreement, it's all part of this ongoing negotiation of how we're able to live together. If you like my social contract t-shirts, you can check out my merch store in the links down below. Give us a comment about what you feel the role of the social contract should be in society. And as always, if you learned something today, give this video a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll see you again next time.